I want to start though with an issue that is hitting almost every area in the country, which is the high cost of housing and people's challenge to have working families be able to afford and to live in their communities. You've worked on this issue in New Jersey and through a number of different policies, and I thought we sort of walk through what you see is working, what's still to be done, and the politics of creating more affordable housing markets for your state.
Yeah, so let's just start foundationally around housing, right? So I think housing policy and housing in general is the sort of cornerstone on which so much other public policy is built, right? So you can't really have great education policy without a real good solid housing policy, environment, economic development, you name it, public safety. Housing is such a key component of that because fundamentally we want to start by providing opportunities for safe and secure shelter for so many people. So when you think through that piece there, you're like, all right, if we know housing is so important, how come we don't have enough of it, right? And we truly have an inventory problem in our country. And that inventory problem is exacerbated not just by different costs that go into building housing that creates it, but there's a regulatory framework in many parts of our country, and I'll use New Jersey, so I'm more familiar with it, that stymies like housing opportunity. Things like land use regulation. We have this thing in our state called home rule, which you'll find in no statutory book ever. You won't see a law that says this is the home rule statute, but it's this idea that certain communities decide what the local and zoning process should be in their particular region. Now, there's benefit to doing that, but sometimes the negative coin of that is that it presents an opportunity to keep certain people out rather than welcoming more people in. And that decreases our ability to actually grow our housing inventory. And looking at the different types of housing structures, that missing middle we talk about of triplexes and duplexes, because of some zoning regulations, because of some parking regulations, you don't get to see that sort of full gambit of housing opportunity. And it just creates this ongoing problem where you never have the ability to put downward pressure on pricing because the one or two pieces that actually make it to the market, you have so many people fighting and striving to get that house. And that just exacerbates pricing and raises it up. So for many of us, the idea of why housing is so important is not just because it is the bedrock of other public policy, but it's also an economic multiplier. When we think about the benefits of housing, what it does for our economy, it recycles dollars throughout the community. So, from both an economic, from both an environment standpoint, and both from an aspect of trying to create more home owners, which creates generational wealth and real good benefits for our economy. That's why it's been something I've really focused on during my tenure in the legislature.
Can you describe the dynamics around housing policy that on one hand everybody understands the good that more housing and more affordable housing can do, on the other hand it's hard politics. So what's it been like for you?
Yeah, Ryan, great question. I think part of the challenge we have is that sometimes affordable housing is used almost as a straw man, kind of boogeyman for other aspects that people don't want to say and want to talk about why they don't want certain people living in their community. And that's something that so many thoughtful minded people, Democrats, Republicans, all across the country, have tried to push back on to varying degrees of success. I look at affordable housing, frankly, as workforce housing in a substantive way. I look at it for the stories that come to our office, like one of our public employees who works for our transit system has never been able to save enough money to buy their own home. They've been renters for their entire life. And while there's nothing wrong with being a renter, if you're really thinking about creating generational wealth, and for so many of us, the greatest asset we will have and what we can give to our prodigy beyond is the home in which we live in, and it changes dynamics, right? All the data tells us that the differences when folks come from a solid, secure home on their trajectory through life moves faster and shows them in a higher economic stratosphere and educational stratosphere, by and large, as a general statement, than those who don't. So we're trying to create more homeowners to create more generational wealth. And a lot of it is combating this negative stereotype that comes with affordable housing. Because affordable housing to me is the veteran who served our country, who needs to come, who's coming home and is trying to get a head start now that they have done ably, willing to give the ultimate devotion to our country, but now need a place to go. Our seniors who are retiring and can't afford to maybe stay in their homes, but like, hey, communal living in a senior complex qualifies for affordable housing in our state. Our men and women who are aging out of group homes, who've had some developmental disability challenges, to want to stay and can be productive in our communities, want to stay in their communities, that qualifies as affordable housing. The single mother working, like, I can go on and on with so many examples of this. But like, folks want to sometimes scare us in public policy, and Ryan, you know this from having time to serve. Folks try and scare us in a public policy rather than talk about the high ideals and the aspirational aspects of public policy to make us better.